Okay, I'm making this video basically, I guess what I'm doing, my aim in this video is to make the case against the separation of church and state. And I guess what I mean by that is that I feel like the original intent of our founding fathers when it pertained to religious liberty has been totally just misrepresented and misinterpreted by the Supreme Court and by other individuals. But where to start, I guess, is at the phrase separation of church and state. A lot of people know, but there's also a lot of people that don't know that that actual phrase is nowhere in our Constitution. There's nowhere in our Constitution that it states that there's a separation of church and state. It was actually in a letter between Thomas Jefferson and the Dansbury Baptist Church, and that's where the Supreme Court took it from. And actually, even in the context of the letter, they've totally misinterpreted that. But anyway, I want to state what is said about religion in our Constitution, and then give you some quotes and some other facts, and that's basically it. But in our Constitution, when you're reading it, the very first thing that you'll come to that says anything about religion is in Article 6 of the Constitution, and it just states that anyone in any branch of government will not have to take any religious test. But there's kind of a little misconception there, because really and truthfully, if you be honest, it requires everyone to take an oath or affirmation. And in the late 18th century, basically to take an oath was to promise to God or to take God's name, and basically to break your oath was to take the Lord's name in vain, and that's why they used it, because people had pretty much profound faith and wouldn't break their oaths because of that. So belief in God was kind of a given, and that's just the truth. I mean, but anyway, we'll move on to the next place that you find it, because right there in Article 6 it says that they have to take no religious test for any certain sect or to take office. And then when you get to the First Amendment and you start reading the Bill of Rights, it's the very first wording that you come to, and there's a reason for that, and that's because it was extremely valuable and extremely sacred and important to our founding fathers. So they put it right there in the First Amendment, and they put it with the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression and press, and the freedom to peaceably assemble. And basically what it reads when you in the First Amendment is it says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And basically what most people can know is that by today's standards, what the Supreme Court has done by their misinterpretation of this statement is that they've totally chopped it up and totally changed it. And how they interpret it today is basically like this. They change Congress to anyone or no one, and they change the word law to expression, and they read it like this. They read it like, no one shall make any religious expression in public, or prohibit the free exercise thereof, and that's just a total misrepresentation of the original meaning. And even the second clause of the First Amendment, or prohibit the free exercise thereof, has been totally twisted in the way that as long as, yes, we can exercise any way we see fit as long as we keep it secret, and that's not how it's supposed to be. We are supposed to be able to express ourselves in public, religiously, freely. But anyway, what I'd like to do with you now is just basically share some quotes of our founding fathers, and I could quote all day long. Trust me, I really could. But I think these ones set precedent for how they felt when they created the documents. When they created our Constitution and their original feelings. And basically, the very first one is right here, and it was on and this was right after President Washington took office, and this was on September 25th of 1789, and Congress came together and they decided unanimously that they wanted to approach the President and tell the President to proclaim to the nation to have a day of national thanksgiving and prayer, and basically for everybody in the nation to come together, get on their knees and pray and thank God for our nation. And so just let me read. And it says, the congressional resolution was delivered to President Washington, who heartily concurred with its request. On October 3rd of 1789, he issued the following proclamation. Whereas it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey His will, to be grateful for His benefits, and humbly to implore His protection and favor. Now therefore I do recommend that we may then all unite in rendering unto Him our sincere and humble thanks for His kind care and protection of the people of this country previous to their becoming a nation, for the signal and manifold mercies of the favorable interpositions of his providence in the course and conclusion of the late war, for the great degree of tranquility, union, and plenty which we have since enjoyed, for the peaceable and rational manner in which we have been enabled to establish constitutions of government for our safety and happiness, and particularly the national one now lately instituted, for the civil and religious liberties with which we are blessed, and also that we may unite in most humbly offering our prayers and supplications to the great Lord and ruler of nations, and beseech him to pardon our national and other transgressions, to promote the knowledge and practice of true religion and virtue. That was our president. That's what he proclaimed to us, basically, to just get down on our knees together and thank God in a whole day of prayer and thanksgiving. And what kind of sets the mood for that letter is this fact, okay? Congress came together unanimously and decided that. On the very same day, earlier that day, they came to the final wording of the First Amendment. So think about that. The individuals who wrote the First Amendment and decided on the wording for it petitioned the president to petition the nation for a day of every single individual coming together and having a day of prayer and thanksgiving, of the ultimate expression of public religious expression. So it shows you that they had nothing against public expression of religion. I mean, that shows you right there. But the next thing that I see a lot of people saying is that our founding fathers weren't really that religious, and that a lot of them were deists. And first of all, the majority, I would say almost all, were really religious. And yes, some of them were deists. But there's a misconception, because what we consider a deist today and what they considered a deist in the late 18th century is two totally different things. And that's what I want to share with you, because one of our least religious founding fathers was probably Benjamin Franklin, and he did consider himself a deist. He was not a Christian, and he was one of our least religious founding fathers. And I want to share a quote with you that he stated during the Second Constitutional Convention when they were making our Constitution. And basically, to set the stage, is that they had been arguing back and forth for 3 or 4 weeks, and they weren't really getting anywhere. And Benjamin Franklin just kind of sat there and watched. And he didn't say much during the conventions, but when he did, everyone listened, because the man was brilliant. He was a genius. I mean, really, he was a political the man was brilliant in every way, not just politics, every aspect of his life. So when he spoke, everyone listened because they respected him, and he was old. I mean, he was in his 80s, and he was stricken with arthritis, and he was in pain. I mean, he actually had to be carried into the room. He couldn't even walk. But anyway, during the convention, he stopped the entire thing, and he addressed the president of the convention, which was actually George Washington. He was the president of the convention as well. And this is what he stated to Washington. This is it right here. Franklin, I'll just read. Franklin declared, "Mr. President, the small progress we have made after 4 or 5 weeks' close attendance and continual reasoning with each other, our different sentiments on almost every question, several of the last producing as many noes as yeas, is methinks a melancholy proof of the imperfection of human understanding. We indeed seem to feel our own want of political wisdom, since we have been running about in search of it. In this situation of this assembly, groping as it were in the dark to find political truth, and scarce able to distinguish it when presented to us, how has it happened, sir, that we have not hitherto once thought of humbly applying to the Father of lights to illuminate our understanding? In the beginning of the contest with Great Britain, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayer in this room for divine protection. Our prayers, sir, were heard, and they were graciously answered. All of us who were engaged in the struggle must have observed frequent instances of superintending providence in our favor. To that kind providence we owe this happy opportunity of consulting in peace on the means of establishing our future national felicity. And have we now forgotten that powerful friend? Or do we imagine we no longer need his assistance? I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proof I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men, men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings that, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. I firmly believe this. And I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. We shall be divided by our little partial local interests. Our projects will be confounded, and we ourselves shall become a reproach and byword down to future ages. And what is worse, mankind may hitherto from this unfortunate instance despair of establishing governments by human wisdom and leave it to chance, war, and conquest. I therefore beg leave to move that henceforth prayers imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessings on our deliberations be held in this assembly every morning before we proceed business, and that one or more of the clergy of this city be requested to officiate in that service. That was Benjamin Franklin. That was one of the least religious founding fathers. And that's how he felt about God and about the protection of providence, the divine protection of providence. It just gives you, it shows you how they felt about it. I mean, that's just the truth, you know. And anti-religious people or groups and the Supreme Court have really molded us in a way that makes us feel like we need to keep our religion in. And it's just not right. You know, our religion is not to be kept in the bedroom like sex or pornography. We ought to be able to express it freely. And you know, another thing that we justify as religious people, that we justify and say, we need to be humble, is because in the Bible Jesus does state, he says, don't be as the hypocrites and go out onto the street corner and profess your prayers. You know what I'm saying? Humble yourself. Go in your closet, shut your door, and pray to God in the dark between me and you. But the difference is this, okay? In today, in the context of then, you would be praised for going on the corner and praying and holding yourself up. Just kind of like if you were in church and you profess your faith, you know, you're like, people are like, yay, you know? Well, if you were to go out on the corner in this day and age, and profess your faith on the corner, people would say, hey, shut up, go home, shut up and go back in your bedroom, be quiet. And you would be just totally condemned. And so I believe that we have a responsibility to stand up and express our faith. And that's what Jesus told us, that we'd be condemned for him and for speaking about him. And regardless of how you feel or what you believe, you have the right to express yourself with your beliefs. If it's nature, if it's energy, power, God, many gods, whatever it may be, you have the right in our Constitution, in the First Amendment, to express yourself in public, and that's the truth. The Supreme Court has greatly misinterpreted everything about religion, and they have used their own, basically, this is the truth. They've taken a piece of a letter and a piece of the 14th Amendment and a piece of the First Amendment and said, okay, we're going to bring all these together and that will allow us to intrude in religion. The Supreme Court and the federal government have no business saying anything about religion. That's just the truth. It was something left to the states, and they just have found a way through misinterpretation and set precedent that allows them now to look back at cases that they created themselves. They never look to the original intent. And if you're going to look at precedent set before, there's only one legitimate place to look, and that's the original intent of the founding fathers that made the document that we live by. Everything else in the last 50 years is hearsay, and it's ridiculous that we allow them to behave in the manner that they do, because the Constitution clearly states that the Supreme Court can hold their office in good behavior. That's all it takes, is that they misbehave. If we believe that they're not behaving right, we get them impeached. Get them out, kicked out. It's possible. It's easy, not easy, but it's something that we can do, and we need to keep our eye on the Supreme Court. Congress, yes. The President, yes, but the Supreme Court is dismantling and destroying our country one decision at a time. Thank you for your time.